Welcome back to April of 2002. In the last episode, we began our thieving journey by getting up to 21 with some basic methods, and then doing the tribal totem quest, which gave us a small boost. Finally, we finished off by thieving 1,000 nature runes from the nature rune chest just outside of the Ardoin marketplace. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump back into April 2002 and get this thieving grind done. Oh, and if you're new to the series, I definitely recommend checking out the playlist linked in the upper right. It'll give you the best overview of the series so far. One small unlock I did get on the way is I can actually thieve from these fur stalls now, and this is where thieving from stalls gets a little tricky. The respawn time for the fur stall is actually quite long. I think it's like 16 seconds, so I could be world hopping in between steals in order to get better experience. But as I said before, I'm trying not to abuse world hopping, as I feel like that's a little outside of the range of what could be possible back in the day. If you look at the raw experience that you get from thieving the stalls, you can compare it to the time it takes the stall to respawn. Silk actually gives you more experience than fur, and actually cakes give you more experience than silk. If I'm looking for raw experience from thieving stalls, I should probably stick with the baker's stall, so that's what I'm gonna do. Another cool thing about it is it's basically pretty AFK. I could just sit here and spam click on the stall until I run with a full inventory, which should take a little while. So I'm gonna stay here for a little bit. We'll see what the experience per hour is and then move on. So I just blew by it, but that was 40 thieving. I'm getting about 12.5k XP an hour, but I had to step away for a small moment in between, so I think I could push about 13 or 14k experience an hour here at the baker's stall. Really not that bad. But let's go ahead and let's give a shot with guards and see how much experience we get there. I'm really curious to know which is going to be better. So it definitely seems like pickpocketing guards is a little bit faster. I'm failing a lot, but I'm still getting enough pickpockets in that I'm pushing about 20k XP an hour. And obviously it only go up from here the more levels I get. So I think I'm going to stick with pickpocketing for the time being. It's just a touch faster than stalls, so it is slightly more annoying. One thing I really like about the thieving skill release as opposed to most of the other skill releases at this point is there's actually a lot of milestones that come really quickly, and this is no exception. Just 3 levels later we unlock our next milestone, which is going to be the coin chest in the upstairs Ardoin houses, so let's go check that out. Right next to the nature rune chest is this chest that I mentioned earlier that I can pick lock, and it only gives me 50 coins. But it's notable because it gives 125 experience per time that I thieve it. I can also thieve the nature rune chest in between, so that's pretty nice. It does have a 50-second respawn timer, which is pretty long, so it's not going to be super useful. But just out of curiosity, I'm going to go through and world hop and try to see just what kind of experience we can get at this chest. I bet it'll probably be the highest I can get. I know that I just said that I wasn't going to abuse world hopping for thieving experience because it doesn't really fit with the theme of Runescape Classic, but I'm mostly just curious to see what kind of experience rate we can pull here. So it's not actually as good as I thought. I'm leveling off around 25k XP an hour, which is definitely faster than what I was getting with guards, but I should be able to approach that pretty quickly here as I continue to level up with normal pickpocketing. So, good to know, at least I'm not missing out on a ton of experience. Of course, I do still get a decent amount of nature runes with this method, so it is a bit of a shame not to use it, but as I said, I really want to retcon that world hopping issue. So, back to the guards we go. There we go, 50 thieving knocked out. That's another milestone actually. It unlocks the next stall that we can steal from, which is the silver stall. This one's really tricky because I think it aggroes the paladins, and they're basically always in this area. Also, the respawn time is like 3 minutes, so it's totally not viable to steal from experience. But if I do steal from it, I get silver ore, which could be a nice convenient way to get silver ore instead of mining it, because I don't have any in the bank right now. Almost missed the level, but there's level 55 thieving, which is probably the most consequential level on our goal other than getting all the way up to 80. As that unlocks the ability to pickpocket Knights of Ardoin. Knights of Ardoin are so notable because they give about twice as much experience as guards, but the fail rate is about the same. So it's basically a double experience per hour buff. Overall, at the Knights, I think I can expect about 40 to 45k experience per hour throughout this entire goal, which is going to be absolutely amazing. I have had so many slow experience per hour goals on this account so far. It's nice to have one that's actually decently fast. I mean, just think about it. We already hit 55 and it's been just about 10 hours so far. It took me 100 hours to hit 55 herb lore. Getting a decent amount of money from this too, almost up to 80k cash. I think by the time we're done, we'll have a couple extra 100k to spend, which will be really nice. And then finally also 1100 total. Not bad considering I don't have access to 6 skills still. Alright, okay, we have a little bit of a ways to go till our next milestone, so I will see you then. What is this aggro range? We are like a mile away from the market, buddy. You got stalls to protect. I don't know why you're over here just following me. You gonna leave the city? Oh no, okay, that's what I thought. And there's 59 thieving, which is actually our next milestone. It's actually kind of cool. I'll show you what I mean. Just to the northwest of the city, there's this tower here, and if you pick the lock, you can actually go in and discover that the entire place is flooded with chaos druids. This is actually pretty nice, as these chaos druids are considerably closer than the ones in the Tal'Vori dungeon, if I ever really needed to kill them again. If you go downstairs as well, it's pretty cool. There's some ogres down here, which is I think the first time these guys have shown up. They don't really have anything super useful in terms of drops, so I probably won't be killing them, but it's a pretty nifty place to kill them if you wanted to. More interestingly though, there are 2 chests here, and if you picklock them, you get 2 blood runes, which is really nice. The unfortunate part though is, as you saw, I get teleported all the way back to the city, which means in order to picklock the other one, I'm gonna have to go ahead and walk all the way back again. Thankfully it's not too far of a walk, but it's really an interesting kind of mechanic, and it defeats world hopping really. Gives 250 experience per picklock though, which is pretty nice. I still think it's going to be slower than the Knights of Ardoin though. So basically that means at the end of the day, I have a totally renewable source of blood runes, which is going to be pretty nice if I ever need a lot of blood runes. This is definitely going to be the fastest method I have of getting them. But for now, let's go back to the Knights, since they're a lot faster experience. So there we are, 66 thieving, which is a pretty random level, but I just kind of wanted to go over my method for pickpocketing from the Knights of Ardoin. So basically I've just been putting them in this little room here and then pickpocketing until I run out of food. And when I need to heal, I just step away so that the knight can walk out and reset their despawn timer. Because if you didn't know, if an NPC is not allowed to walk within 5 minutes, they will respawn back to their initial spawn point, which would mean he would teleport outside of the room and be super obnoxious. There are a couple ways to circumvent this. One is obviously to let him walk, which is a little annoying here, but another way is actually to splash on the NPC, or basically be in combat with them. That will constantly reset the respawn timer as well. So typically there's 2 ways people will go about this. They'll either splash on a knight that's trapped in the bank, or they'll use this knight who's trapped here. This knight is very special because its wander range actually ends with the tiles it's on. So the only thing it can do is walk back and forth here, and it can't walk further into the room. This means it's really easy to continue spam clicking on the NPC without it ever despawning. I actually put a poll up on the channel to see if it would be okay if I used this knight or the one that's being splashed on in the bank, because you actually wouldn't be able to get these NPCs set up the way they are in RuneScape Classic. Splashing didn't exist obviously, so that one's really easy, but this one is a little bit more tricky because in order to get it into the room at all, you need to use a Dragon Spear special attack to get it through the door. Basically, you push it outside of its wander range through the door, and then it tries to go back and get stuck in this little part of the room. Now that poll was actually successful, with just over half of people saying it would be totally okay if I used this method, because I'm not actually putting the NPC there, someone else is. But it seems pretty divisive, so I'm not going to take advantage of this, I don't think. Rather just play it safe and thieve more akin to what it would actually be in RuneScape Classic, which is basically just trapping the NPC in a room. It's really a pretty minor thing at the end of the day, but it is notable. So without further ado, let's get back to thieving. And like literally right after I go through that walkthrough, I just like attract a crowd of people to my knight. I don't know why this knight is so attractive when there's so many better options for people who don't have weird ass restrictions like I do.
It's so funny. It's such a good joke. No, it's not. That wasn't funny. Please, please never speak to me again.
And there we go, level 70 thieving achieved, our next milestone. I'll show you what we unlocked. So at level 70, we actually gain the ability to pickpocket paladins, but unfortunately they're not actually that useful, and we'll be sticking with the knights. They do have a pretty useful drop though, and that's 2 chaos runes, but because I'm so loaded with cash, as you can see, already up to 416k cash from this grind so far, and by the end I'm going to be well over 1 million gold. I don't really need to pickpocket chaos runes, I can just buy them. The success of pickpocketing the paladins is about half of what it is for the knights, and the experience doesn't compensate, so we're going to be sticking with the knights for the time being. But if I'm ever in a pinch for some chaos runes, it'll be nice to know the paladins are here. Also, take a really close look at the chat box. Some good advice there. I would definitely follow it if I were you. And there we go, level 72 thieving just a couple hours after level 70. And this is actually our next cool milestone. So let's go check out this next unlock. Also, it's pretty cool. I'm pushing nearly 70,000 experience an hour from this grind, which is incredible. I haven't had a grind that has been going quite as fast as this one ever before. The experience is just so much faster than what I'm used to, and it's only going to keep going up from here. So on the other side of East Ardoin is the Ardoin Castle, and there's not really a whole lot here for me to do. There's a lot of thievable NPCs, but they're so much further from the market and therefore the bank that it's not really worth coming over here to actually pickpocket them. That said, in the upstairs of the castle, there's a room you can picklock, and this is actually the paladin's quarters. Once I'm able to get in, there's actually a black scimitar spawn here, which is kind of an interesting item that is available to me if I wanted it, though I don't really have a reason to. Once I walk to the back of the room, there's a chest that we can search for traps on, so let's picklock it and see what's inside. Interestingly, it's a raw shark, an adamant ore, and an uncut sapphire. And then it teleports me all the way to the other side of the city. I also got 500 coins from this as well, which is not a bad amount. Of course, though, the problem is the fact that it teleports you so far away makes it kind of useless. The uncut sapphire is pretty nice, but the adamant ore and the raw shark are not that useful. I can get those pretty easily. And even the uncut sapphire is not particularly useful, as in just a few levels we'll unlock the gem stall, which is a much easier way to get gems than that. So unfortunately, we're back to the night. It's just going to be nights from here on out. I'm just here doing my thing, thieving away, and I'm like, my knight doubled. It's a guy cosplaying as a knight. It scared the crap out of me. And there we go, 75 thieving, our last big milestone on the way to level 80. This one unlocks gem stalls, which is actually going to be huge. So the gem stall is just like any other stall. You click on it to steal a gem, and you get a gem. What makes this notable is it's actually the first renewable source of gems that I have access to. I mean, technically mining is renewable, but it's also RNG based. This is literally just click on the stall and get a gem. If I had access to this last month, I would have camped this stall for all of the gems I needed for 80 crafting. This is how good it actually is for crafting. So of course, that said, I'm definitely going to be stealing from this stall whenever I can, whenever I walk by it pretty much. It has a really long respawn timer that I could circumvent with world hopping, but because I'm focusing on experience anyway, I'm just going to be pickpocketing the knights. So if I walk by, I'll grab a gem. Alright, just a quick break from the thieving grind in order to come over here to Alcarid and complete the Easter 2022 event. Now, as with the other events that I've done so far, I did this only to achieve the item that actually came out in the current month I'm in, and that is Easter eggs. Easter eggs were dropped around the game world in April of 2002, and you could just pick them up if you were lucky enough to find them. It's not that interesting as it's just a consumable food item, but it is still notable, and I'm glad that they give them out still, so I'm able to have them here as well. Obviously, doing this whole event is an exception, but I think it's worth it so I can get the Easter eggs, and also, in addition, I can get bunny ears, which come out in 1 year, just in case I actually hit April 2003 before the next real life Easter event. Of course, I am actually going to destroy all of these rewards other than the Easter eggs. I can eventually reclaim them from Diego, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, without further ado, let's get back and finish up this thieving grind. 80 thieving, here we come. So a couple of huge milestones here actually. What's in my inventory is the last of my mackerel. I started with about 2,500 mackerel, and this is the rest of it, which is actually kind of huge because it only heals 6 and I wasn't sure where it would be useful in the future. So it's pretty nice to be able to use it up here. The other thing is I'm over 1 million cash from this grind. I didn't factor this cash into my planning, so it's a really nice kind of unexpected bonus. I kind of forgot that you get a bunch of money from thieving, go figure. Obviously it's not the most useful thing in the world because we do have all that money stored in the U longbows and I don't need that much money in general, but I'll still take it. I'm sure we'll need it at some point in the future. And finally, with one more pickpocket of the Night of Ardoin here, That is 80 thieving. We are finally done with this part of the goal. We can now pickpocket from heroes, which is incredible. Honestly, I can't really complain. This grind has been extremely fast and extremely chill. Even though it's pretty high focus, it really is not too bad. Especially when compared to the crafting grind that I just went through, I would take this ground over again for sure. So without further ado, let's go ahead and pickpocket our friend the hero here and get that drop that I'm looking for from them. So there we go. That is the fire orb, which is probably the most interesting drop that I can get from thieving in general, because it's a pretty hard item for me to get, and it's pretty useful for crafting. As you know, I'm already locked out of battle stabs because of other integrity changes that have happened, but cosmic runes are actually really hard to come by in Runescape Classic, and crafting the fire orbs is therefore pretty difficult. So having renewable source from an alternative method is actually pretty powerful. However, that said, the success rate for thieving the hero is incredibly low, and it's a 1 out of 64 drop. So it's probably not actually that viable to take advantage of, unfortunately. Overall, getting this one fire orb took me almost 30 minutes. So definitely not as useful as it might seem. What is useful, however, is this 1.17 million cash in my inventory. Absolutely ridiculous. I did not realize I'd get so much cash from this grind. And the other thing that's a really useful takeaway is this gem stall. Being able to thieve gems here is incredible, and I'll continue to keep thieving it whenever I'm in the area, just because I want to stock up as many gems as I possibly can for future crafting. Even through this thieving grind, I'm still looking forward to the future, and through the lens of Entronic crafting. I don't want to go back. Don't make me go back, please. Super happy to be done with this grind, though. 80 thieving in the bag. Let's get moving on to the next part of the month of April. So the next quest that we have to do is actually going to be Family Crest, which is pretty notable as it was specifically mentioned in the patch notes that this was a very experienced and difficult quest, and more easy quests would be coming soon to compensate. It does have some really high requirements, the highest requirements we've seen for a quest so far, including 59 magic, so that is pretty notable. And we'll see what kind of adventure it puts us on. We begin by talking to Dominthius here in the eastern side of Varrock. We ask him what he's doing on this side of Varrock, living basically in poverty when he claims to be a nobleman, and he says that the king of Varrock has taken his estate away from him because he cannot prove that he is of noble heritage. Specifically, he talks about how this is part of the history of Varrock, where there would be different clans that were warring, and you would have a crest to identify each clan. If a crest was captured by a rival clan, then that means that that clan gained access to all the rival clans' wealth and land and everything. Specifically, Dominthius says that his crest was taken by his 3 sons when they went out to fight in a war against an undead necromancer and his army in the battle to save Varrock, which is, I did not realize that they were veterans of some ancient undead war. Specifically, he calls out that he thought his sons were dead, but recently caught word that his one son Caleb is alive and somewhere in the area beyond the White Wolf Mountain trying to make a life for himself. Specifically, he requests us to go find Caleb and talk to him about potentially getting the family crest back, and also specifically to let him know that his father still loves him. Aww. All that said, our quest is before us. Let's go seek out Caleb and see what he has to say for himself. Interesting that the quest kind of expects you to just seek out where this NPC is in the entire western half of the game. But thankfully, I know that he's already in Catherby, so here's Caleb. We confront him about the crest, and he lets us know that he has just a piece of it. And unfortunately, through a dispute with his brothers, they split the crest into 3 parts, and each of them took a piece with them. If we ask him what he's been up to all this time, he says that he's trying to become one of the world's leading chefs by preparing a special and unique fish salad. If we ask him if we could have his piece of the crest, he says that he is the oldest son, so by the rules of chivalry, he is entitled to the entire crest. All that said, he doesn't have the full crest, so it's completely useless to have just a piece, and he requests that if I help him with his fish salad, he will give me the piece of the crest. Okay then. Seems like kind of a pretty crummy trade if you ask me, but I'll take it. He asked for a collection of fish which I have in my inventory here, and I prepared in advance knowing that he would ask for it. Handing over the fish, he gives me his part of the crest, and that's pretty straightforward. I ask him where we might be able to find his other two brothers, and he does mention that he did hear from his brother Avan a while ago, and he was specifically hunting for some sort of treasure out in the desert. So that kind of screams to me that we need to head back to Alcared, so let's head there. And utilizing our last charge of our first glory amulet already. Jeez, these charges go so fast, but also I'm so thankful it's incredibly easy to recharge it. So thankfully the desert is kind of a smaller area to hunt, but also we need a lead to figure out where Avan is at all. And speaking to the gem trader seems to be a good place to actually go about it. He mentions that Avan should be north in the mine scouting out for some gold, so we're gonna head there. It's kind of interesting that you need to speak to an NPC to get a lead on Avan when you didn't need to talk to anyone to get a lead on Caleb, you just needed to kind of find him. So we find Avan hanging out, scouting out the gold rocks as expected here at the Alcared mine. He suspects that his brothers have put me up to this, but when I mention it's his father, he's a little bit more open-minded to potentially giving me his crest piece. However, of course he won't just give me his crest piece, he needs something in return, and he's looking for some fine jewelry. He's not looking for just any jewelry, of course. This jewelry needs to be made with the purest, most high quality of gold. Specifically, he's looking for what's known as perfect gold. He says if I can make a ruby ring and necklace out of this gold, he'll gladly give me his crest part. We ask for a lead on where we might find the perfect gold, and he gives us the name of a dwarf called Boot. He says that Boot at some point returned to his home in the mountains and has no idea where to find him. Well, let's go have a look around the Dwarven mine then. After some poking around inside the Dwarven mine, we locate Boot towards the western half of the mine. Interestingly, we can ask him why he's called Boot, and he lets us know that it was because he used to sleep in a large boot when he was little. And then we respond with, yeah great, I didn't want your life story. What the hell, man? We asked him why he got his name. Jeez, this character is so rude. Thankfully, even after that insult, I ask him where we can find the high quality gold, and he still gives us the lead. He says specifically it's just east of the large city of Ardoin, underground somewhere. So that's good enough of a lead. Let's head back to Ardoin and see if we can find this gold. So just to the east of Ardoin, as expected, there are some old ruins here that we'll go down and explore. And inside the old ruins, we can see that there are some gold rocks in here. So very interestingly, I'm going to suspect that those are probably the perfect gold rocks as described by Boot. But they are locked behind a door, so we need to figure out how to get this door open first. And how we're going to do that is a good old-fashioned lever puzzle. Yep, just like Ernest the Chicken, the lever puzzle is back, this time over the space of 2 rooms instead of 1. Also, these ogres are really beating the crap out of me, ouch. Basically, the lever in the north and the south room had to both be down, and in addition, the doors to the rooms were locked by additional levers, so I had to get into both rooms, get both levers down, and now I can get into the room with the perfect gold. It is guarded by some scary hellhounds, but I'm not too worried about it because I have the power of Protect from Melee, which would have been Paralyzed Monster back in the day. I like how the quest guide for this part highly recommends you bring a rune pickaxe, and I'm just here with my bronze pickaxe like, this is the best I got, sorry. There we go, our 2 gold ores. Let's head back to Alcarid and get this jewelry made up. All we have to do is smelt the perfect gold bars and then smith the perfect ruby ring and the perfect ruby necklace. There we go. Let's go turn these into Avan and be on our way. And turning those into Avan, he gives us the second piece of the crest. He also immediately lets me know that he has a lead on the third brother, Jonathan, who's in possession of the final piece of the crest. He says that Jonathan was attempting to study magic in order to defeat some sort of demon out in the wilderness, but probably failed along the way and is probably recouping in an inn on the edge of the wilderness. Thankfully, I know just such an inn. And that is, of course, the Wild Boar Inn here on the northern end of Varrock, just south of the wilderness. We were just here not that long ago in order to complete the bar crawl. And here's Jonathan, huddled in the corner of one of the rooms of the inn. We try to ask him about the piece of the crest, but unfortunately he's been poisoned by something and he's just not quite feeling up to talking. So That's why I brought this anti-poison, so that he could be cured of his poison and we could actually have a conversation. He mentions that he unfortunately no longer has his piece of the crest, as in his quest to kill the fiendish Chronozon, he lost a lot of equipment, including his piece. So the quest is simple. I'll have to go defeat Chronozon and get the piece back from him. Jonathan does mention that Chronozon is a powerful demon and I will have to be a skilled mage in order to defeat him. I need to hit him with one of each of the 4 blast spells in order to weaken him enough to conventional damage. He mentions that unfortunately Chronozon has made his lair in the wilderness, so we'll have to trek out there again today. He also mentions that Chronozon's lair is surrounded by poison spiders now, so I'll definitely want to bring some more anti-poison for myself. All that seems pretty straightforward. Let's head over and try to defeat this demon. Now, interestingly, when this quest first came out, Chronozon was much deeper in the wilderness, I think like around level 20, and it obviously became a very popular spot to camp for people doing the quest. In response, Jagex moved it to much lower wilderness, and it's just kind of just inside the Edgeville Dungeon wilderness right now, which is not too bad. And here he is, Mr. Chronozon himself. Just as Jonathan instructed, I'm going to hit him with one of each of the spells in order to weaken him enough so that I can damage him with conventional damage, which in this case will be my bow and arrow. I made this with 300 hours of my own time last month. Damn it, Chronozon, you're going to take it and you're going to like it. And there we go. Chronozon is down and the crest part is on the ground. Let's go ahead and grab those and get the heck out of here. I don't actually need to return to Jonathan after defeating Chronozon, but interestingly, if I do, he doesn't really ask about the fight at all. He just says, yep, you have the crest piece, now go return it to my father. I thought you might want to know a little bit more about how the fight went there, Jonathan. But yep, as he says, we have all 3 pieces of the crest, so we can use one on the other, and we get a completed crest. Now, interestingly, according to the lore of this quest, at this point, I should be able to go to the King of Varrock, announce that I have taken control of this specific family's crest, and I should get the estate and all of the treasure that is associated with that family. I don't know about you, but I would much prefer that option versus what I'm about to do, which is turn in the family crest here. I'll take an estate and a bunch of riches, thank you, that sounds amazing. Unfortunately, however, that is not an option, and we must talk to Domintheus and turn in the crest to complete the quest here. Thankfully, however, we do get a really good reward in the gauntlets that he's about to give us. Apparently a family heirloom passed down through the generations, and have always returned to the head of the family. Specifically, they can be imbued with extra powers if I visit one of the sons. Now, these gauntlets are kind of unassuming at first glance, but they're actually extremely important. If I equip them, you can see that they actually have a strength bonus and a very minimal attack bonus associated with them. These are the best in slot gloves for all of Runescape Classic, and actually one of the only armor pieces in the game to give an offensive bonus, so I will be wearing these basically all of the time. In addition to that, they have a pretty massive melee based defense bonus set, so that'll be extremely useful. In addition to this, I can also imbue these gloves to have some additional powers. At this point, I'm very unsure which I'm going to get, so I'm going to leave them unimbued for the time being. The gloves have the same stats unimbued versus imbued, and we'll decide which one we want to choose in the future. The most important distinction between RS Classic and RS2 is that you can't actually modify which imbue you pick after you actually get them imbued. So whichever choice I make, I'm stuck with until RS2 release, so it needs to be a very, very good one. And that's not a decision I'm willing to make at this point for sure. Now there is one other really interesting part about getting these gloves that we need to talk about, so I'll talk about that now. So what am I doing exactly back here at the Champions Guild once again? Well, that thing that we needed to talk about has to do with my plate body. Back in RuneScape Classic, plate bodies included a glove extension. That is to say, you basically weren't able to wear a plate body and gloves together in the same equipment setup. This wound up being pretty inconsequential until this day when the steel gauntlets came out and they provided a pretty good offensive boost. You wanted to wear these obviously because they gave a pretty nice power and accuracy bonus, but you can't actually wear it with the plate body. This created an interesting dynamic in RS Classic where you could wear a plate body if you wanted to be tankier, but more importantly, you could wear a chain body in order to wear your steel gauntlets at the same time. And that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to go ahead and purchase a rune chain body here so that I can canonically wear my gauntlets at the same time. It does decrease my defense bonuses quite a bit across the board, except for Crush, which stays a little bit higher. Overall though, it's pretty negligible in terms of defense bonuses, and it allows me to wear the gloves, so that'll be pretty great. Now that we've got the steel gauntlets and I'll be wanting to wear them all the time, it'll be chain body from here on out. So unfortunately we say goodbye to the rune plate body for the time being, with a little bit of a high alchemy. Goodbye plate body. You've served us well. And here we are, already at the close of another month. Honestly, it was really nice to have a month that provided a lot of interesting content and didn't take me an incredibly long amount of time. February and March both took so long that April was a welcome refresher. We didn't leave without some very cool items this time around though. Of course I did get that nature rune stack from thieving, as well as that over 1 million cash. Extremely beneficial on the grind to 80 thieving. We also unlocked this weird niche method for getting fire orbs in the future if we ever find a need for them, and some thieving experience at the same time. I also got the Easter egg, which was dropped this month for the Easter event. And then finally, of course, the steel gauntlets, our best in slot gauntlets for the entirety of Runescape Classic. Now if we go ahead and look at the time played for April of 2002, it's actually almost exactly 2 days or 48 hours, which is pretty cool because I was estimating this month to take me around 40 to 50 hours, and that was almost spot on. The cool thing is from here, we have a pretty easy summer ahead of us. There are a lot of quests to do in the coming months, but not a lot of grinds, which I'm really excited for. It's all going to be really interesting content though, so I hope you'll stick around and join me for the next month. Of course, thank you so much for watching, but an extra huge thank you to all the members who have joined the channel so far. Your support makes this grind incredibly worthwhile, and I thank every single person on this list so much. But of course, we can't leave without giving that extra huge thank you to our top tier supporters, 2 on Pendrag, 1Killer912, and Peepo Time. Take care, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in May of 2002.